In the east of England is the county of Cambridgeshire. Its county town may be world famous for its medieval university, but there are some stunning market towns lying in its shadow. But what are the prettiest? To establish this, I've visited them all personally, and my conclusions are presented to you in this top 10 list. As per the rules of this series of videos, villages are not included for consideration as there are just too many of them, but cities are, and with Cambridgeshire being home to 3 cities, that may just come into play. Anyway, let's get straight to it. Number 10. Getting us started is a town that was once an island prior to the draining of the marshy fenlands from the 17th century. But this being Cambridgeshire, that actually doesn't narrow it down much at all. But for those of you local to the area who've clocked the tall spire of St Mary's Church, you'll know I'm speaking of Whittlesea. As well as the aforementioned medieval church, Whittlesea also boasts its very own 17th century buttercross. What's a buttercross, you might ask? Well, it's a structure like this one, where historically farmers would sell their dairy products at market without any threat from the rain. Throwing in 1 or 2 thatched cottages in the mix, you have this rather elegant looking town. Number 9. Now to a town whose first known resident is said to have been Huna the Hermit, way back in 679 AD. Another settlement that was originally an island, which in this case likely provided a haven from the turbulent conflicts between the East Angles and the Vikings. Chatteris. In addition to many fine old brick buildings along the winding high street, one of the architectural highlights is the Church of St Peter and St Paul, whose tower dates from the 14th century. From the top of the tower, it is claimed to be possible to see both Ely Cathedral and Peterborough Cathedral, on a clear day of course, and probably with some decent binoculars. Number 8. And now to a place where it's March all year round, in the town of March. Sorry, my team of pun writers have gone on holiday. So, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, this town was, you guessed it, once an island. Lying on the old course of the River Nene, it was also a minor port from all the way back in the 16th century, when cargo vessels came as far upstream as here. A big deal in an era prior to canals, and one of the driving forces of its development, along with the 17th century draining of the fens. The March of today boasts a riverside adorned with colourful houses, as well as the distinctive Renaissance-style town hall completed in 1900. Number 7. Now to the first of a handful of entries from the historic county of Huntingdonshire, a county that was effectively relegated to the status of district as it was swallowed up by Cambridgeshire in the 70s, a topic I covered in a recent video, so if you're interested there's a link in the description. The town is St Neots. The town was named after a Cornish saint whose body was mysteriously reinterred here in the 10th century, away from his original resting place 250 miles away. There's more history here still, as the Battle of St Neots took place in this very town centre in 1648. It didn't end well for the royalists, some of whom perished in the River Great Ouse trying to escape. Being situated on the Great North Road, or essentially the A1 in modern terms, St Neots has managed to stave off ultra-modernisation, more so than other commuter towns at least. Number 6. Here's the perfect example of why I do include cities for consideration in this series of videos, because this city is home to around just 20,000 people, making it one of the smallest in England. Ely. Historically, this has often been referred to as the Isle of Ely. I think by this point you can probably guess why. Its most notable landmark is without a doubt Ely Cathedral, whose construction began all the way back in the 11th century by the Normans. Despite not having a spire, the cathedral is visible from several miles away owing to the flat marshy terrain, something which was demonstrated by none other than Pink Floyd with their album cover for the Division Bell. It also provides a pleasant backdrop for the city's bustling marketplace. Number 5. Now for yet more island hopping. Historically speaking, with a town that was once home to one of the wealthiest Benedictine abbeys in the country, Ramsey. When Ramsey Abbey was founded in the 10th century, the area could only be reached by boat. Today it's a little more accessible, although there isn't a railway station for a good 10 miles or so, and buses aren't exactly frequent either. Some may claim that this helps it retain its rustic aesthetic, though I'd argue that an equally effective measure to that end would be simply not greenlighting concrete tower blocks, for instance. Either way, it's hard to deny its small market town charm. Oh, and it's perhaps one of the few towns where it's possible to see leftover Christmas decorations and daffodils in the same space. Number 4. And now to the county's most northerly town. Sandwiched between Norfolk and Lincolnshire is the town of Wisbech. If you're wondering what effect the draining of the fens from the 17th century had on Cambridgeshire, look no further than Wisbech. In short, the county was transformed from something akin to a swamp archipelago to a thriving centre of agriculture, and in turn, Wisbech grew into a wealthy port town that traded with the Baltic. This explains the ubiquity of fine Georgian and early Victorian buildings that line both sides of the River Nene. There's also a rather unique street layout to Wisbech on account of its castle around which roads were built, except the castle itself is long gone, and in its place is a Regency era villa. And I mean genuine Regency era, not like that fake stuff in Regent Street in London. But perhaps the biggest head scratcher around Wisbech is how this town of around 30,000 residents has no railway station. Number 3. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with the riddle that starts with the words, "As I was going to St. Ives, I met a man with 7 wives." But perhaps the real riddle is, which St. Ives was the narrator from this 18th century verse going to? Well, there's a strong hypothesis for it not being Cornwall at all, despite what many would assume, and that it's in fact its namesake, St. Ives, Cambridgeshire, or rather St. Ives, Huntingdonshire, as it was at the time. In any case, here's a town that owes much of its existence to the monks of Ramsey Abbey from our number 5 entry. After they built a bridge over the River Great Ouse here, drovers began paying tolls to cross it on their way to market. The stone bridge standing today is from the 15th century, along with its very own chapel attached, one of just a few instances of this in the country. The statue of former resident Oliver Cromwell in the very centre of St Ives may divide opinions, but there can be little doubt as to the aesthetic charm of this riverside town. Number 2. And our runner-up spot goes to a former Roman settlement at the crossroads between Ermine Street and the Via Divana. To the Romans, it went by the name Durovigutum. Today, we know it as Godmanchester. Here's a town that often gets overlooked. Although it has no railway station of its own, the first sight to greet you upon approaching the station of the neighbouring town of Huntingdon is the 17th century spire of St Mary's Church in Godmanchester. Those who venture south of the River Great Ouse from Huntingdon will be rewarded with many pretty views in this erstwhile Roman fort. Of particular note is Godmanchester Chinese Bridge that spans a mill stream, as well as a healthy scattering of timber-framed buildings, the likes of which you rarely see at all in Cambridgeshire. That just leaves one more spot, but first an honourable mention to a city that gets a bad rap, and one that's exacerbated by opportunistic YouTubers who see it as a soft target. But to preempt the inevitable remarks in the comments section below, along the lines of, "Where's Peterborough, lol?" Well, here's Peterborough. Does it have its faults? Sure. But name me one city or town that doesn't. And if it's as bad as the clickbait YouTubers say it is, how do you explain Peterborough Cathedral? Well, I'll leave you to ponder on that one. Number 1. And as tempting as it was to throw a curveball at the end, this one's a little predictable, as it would make no sense not to award the top spot to Cambridge. So, the world-famous university city has its academic origins in the 13th century, but its history goes back way further still. This is evidenced by one building in particular, namely St Benet's Church, whose tower is early 11th century Anglo-Saxon in origin. And this is one of dozens of churches in Cambridge, and more still if you count college chapels. In fact, the only thing it's missing is a cathedral. hence why it took until as recently as 1951 for it to officially gain city status. Another highlight of Cambridge is the River Cam, which weaves around the college buildings, making for a popular experience in the form of punting, i.e. propelling a boat by pushing a large stick against the riverbed. Then there's Pembroke College Chapel, the first ever commission of an aspiring architect by the name Christopher Wren, and the 18th century Senate House, whereupon a car mysteriously made its way onto the roof, courtesy of pranksters in 1958. In short, from the sublime to the ridiculous, Cambridge has it all, thus concluding this list of my picks for the top 10 prettiest towns and cities in Cambridgeshire. By all means, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The plan is to get around every single county, so if that's of interest, feel free to subscribe or catch up with the previous episodes via the link on the screen now. Thanks for watching and have a great day.